This video is going to walk you through how to use the motion array template Coronavirus 3D titles in Premiere Pro. So this is the video that we're going to be working on in Premiere Pro. We're going to change out one of these scenes, and you'll notice most of these motion array templates have several scenes. If we're going to be making a stinger, we're just going to pick one of these that matches the mood, matches the feel. It works perhaps also as an OTS if we screen grab it later. So this is helpful to know which motion array template you're using so that you can watch it here and understand which one of these scenes you'd like to edit. So I've already downloaded this and I've put it into Box. If I unmute this, you'll hear that I also have music. There's some music in the background, but the music that's downloaded inside of the Premiere Pro folder will have the word preview throughout it, just for copyright. So I went ahead and also downloaded this Dark Silence. You don't have to use these music clips, so it's just this one.
Preview.
And you'll hear it says preview in it, but once it's downloaded, we remove the word preview. So you don't always have to use the music that comes with it, but sometimes it's helpful. You can edit the music onto the stinger and then wait until we see if it's gonna work with the show, or if you're using this for editing like B-roll or something inside of your package, you may not want this music because perhaps you have a different music, or perhaps you don't want any music at all. But I'm gonna show you how to add this one in there. First, we're starting inside of our folders. After I've downloaded it, you're gonna notice that these are zipped. So you're just gonna double click to open it up and unzip the folder. And this is the main folder. You're gonna see a fonts folder. You're gonna wanna open that up, and it's going to have you download the font. I've already downloaded this font, so I'm just gonna show you. Font Scroll is a very common source for fonts, so feel free to use this for other things as well. This is the font that we're going to use. So you download the OTF, then you go to your Finder, and you find that in the downloads. You unzip it, you open this up, and it's going to give you all these different kinds of fonts, like the black, bold, light, italics. I've already gone through and clicked on each of these and installed the font like this. So you're just going to have to go through and install fonts. The more fonts you install, actually, the better it'll be for you, because then you'll be able to use these fonts in any of the softwares that you're using, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Photoshop. So this is a great resource for fonts. So after I've downloaded the font, I'm going to go over here and look at the help folder. I'm going to walk you through this, but next time you do a different motion array template that I haven't walked you through, you're going to want to look at these tutorials. This has lots of links here just to remind you that you can go and access that at any time. Then this other one, tutorial, these look a little different depending on who created the template, but usually they have a really easy step-by-step process. First click here, then click here, and this is what we're going to walk through today. But this is always attached to the motion array templates, so make sure you look there first. The next thing we're going to do is open our Premiere Pro folder and go ahead and just double click on the project file. So a couple of things may happen when you open a project. Sometimes it'll give you a little box that says that the person who created it maybe worked on a different system. Maybe they were working on Mac and you have a Windows, or vice versa. And it may just have a pop-up that says, we need to convert this, and then you just hit OK, and that's not a big deal. So this is usually the layout that you're going to see. We're going to go over here on the top left. This will allow you to edit the placeholders. If this little drop down is closed, you can go into this top one here. Usually it'll say edit placeholders, or it'll say edit, or something similar. The folder might be on top, it might be in second or something, but usually it's right around here. So we're going to scroll through. Let's say we want to use the first scene. This is the one that we're going to edit today. I want to find out which one of these this is, because we don't need all of this for the sake of what we're doing. So if we're going to create a quick stinger, for example, we don't need to really worry about the rest, but there's tons of these titles. So if you drop this down, you'll see, there's 6 different titles. It's helpful for us that this is the first one, because we just click title 01 and this is the one we're editing. First of all, coronavirus is one word, so we're going to want to fix that. But just so that you understand how to fix these things, and so that you can create your own little assignment that we're going to have here, I'm going to write something different. So usually it would be like coronavirus, but in this instance, just to show you what happens, I'm going to write my name, Jeanette Abrahamson. And now you see the font is too big and it's fallen off, so you can't see my last name. So you're going to need to customize a lot of these. If you can fit what you want into the folder or into the border that's already there, awesome. But if you can't, you always want to go over to your effects control panel, and here's the little text thing. You see it says my full name, but because it's too long or this space isn't big enough, it doesn't show up. So I'm going to drop this down in effects control. The font is correct. That's the Montserrat font we downloaded earlier. This is the font size. So one thing I could do is just reduce the font size, and now you see the full Jeanette Abrahamson pops up here. That's probably the easiest thing to do. But you do have other options if you wanted to change more things about this template. You can always go through here and adjust a lot of these little settings, but I would encourage you to avoid adjusting things unless you need to, because the more you adjust, the harder it could be sometimes, because sometimes the templates are specifically made and there's like a domino effect. But if you click on this one, for example, you can see you can mess around with it. If you're trying to mess with it and you're like, oh no, I ruined it, you don't have to start over. You just right click here and just clear, and then it'll kind of pop back, or you can always do edit undo. So I do encourage you to experiment with it, but in this case we're going to do a simple, just change the font size. That's all we really need to do for this example. So this one I think is done, but in order for me to see that it fits and that it looks good, I'm going to go over to my sequence here and I'm going to click on Final Comp. Now I'm back here to my Final Comp. Everything fits. I'm scrolling through it. It doesn't get cut off anywhere. And this I think looks okay. If it's too small, I could try to mess with the scale. So if I click on this here, I could go over to Scale in Effects Control, and I could try to increase the scale this way. But you always want to play it back from the beginning to make sure that it didn't get cut off or do anything weird. And in this instance, that works. So sometimes you can do the scale in Effects Control on the layer here. Other times you're going to be doing it inside of the actual title. So let's go back to the Final Comp. That's still a little bit big. I want to try to be careful about getting too close to the edges. This is actually title safe, but I don't want to even push it. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So maybe I'll make it 142. So now it says Jeanette Abrahamson. And if I go back to my title, if I don't really like some of these font spacings, for example, I could adjust that. Like I could change this here by removing the space. I could drag this left. That's also an option. That's this one right here. But I kind of like the way it looks, so I'm just going to Command Z and or undo it. Or drag it back out, either one. So let's say that this is what I want, but you do have the option of adjusting that in many of these templates, so it's just good for you to know that. The next thing I want to edit is 5 ways to prevent and prepare for the coronavirus. Just for the sake of this example, so that all of you can customize this, you will always change the font, in all of these templates, or you'll change the text. You'll go down to your timeline here, and right now Jeanette Abrahamson is highlighted. But when I click over here, now I'm going to be able to edit the text that's in here. So now it's outlined in red, and I'm just going to write a little message that's 2 lines. So this is an example template tutorial to teach people motion array. So I don't like one word at the end, so usually 2 lines is good. So I do have some options. I could go back over here like we did before with the effects control. I could change the font size. Or I could also remove some unnecessary words. Usually that's what you're going to need to do in Motionary templates or graphics in general. Maybe instead of this as an example, just say example template tutorial to teach people Motionary. That's fine, and then I can make it bigger or whatever. But this is basically how you adjust these things. So you can come back here and mess with like the font size, let's say I want it to be 2 lines. I can also adjust the space between the lines by hovering over these 2 A's and clicking and dragging right or left. Sometimes if you edit something, you may notice your text is like on top of itself. The way to fix that is just to click on these 2 little A's that are on top of each other and move these around so that it has like a comfortable spacing. So everything you want to edit here, your leading, your kerning, all of these are right here. These are great for you. You can also change the color if you want to by double clicking on this and then selecting like a different color for if you wanted different things, but I'm going to keep it white for now. You can also adjust the position if you need to rotate it. A whole bunch of options you have here, but let's leave it at this for now and then go back to Final Comp and just take a look at the way it looks. So it comes out here, Jeanette Abrahamson, example template tutorial to teach people Motionary. Great. Okay, so let's say that's all I wanted. I don't actually need the rest of this, so I don't want to export the entire timeline. I also don't want to use this audio if it has the word preview in it. So let's just go ahead and play it and see if we have to replace it with the one that I downloaded. And that didn't, which is actually great. But if it did, I went ahead and downloaded the music. It's called Dark Silence. There's lots of different types of music that you can find on Motionary. Usually this is the short version. This is the longer version. I could, in theory, drag this down on my timeline here, add additional music, or change these if I wanted to. But in this case, I'm happy with what we have going on here. And I only want to export a stinger. So let's say this is my stinger. Obviously, my text wouldn't say this for the stinger, but just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to let it reveal off. And I always want to give a little bit of pad. You know, my show editor, or if we're doing it in person, it would be the director, would always cut away, but it's always good to have pad. So let's say that I wanted to end it like here. So it'll be 7 seconds long. In reality, it's probably only going to be 3, 4, maybe 5 seconds long, but I want to give a little bit of pad just so they have some time. Usually 3 seconds is good for the total time that it actually ends up airing in the show. So now that I've had my timing bar here, I'm just going to hit O. And this gives me my in and my out. If I were to choose a different section, let's say I wanted to use this, I would start at the beginning. Let's say we were starting here. I would hit I for in and go to the end. Let's say this was the end. I'd hit O. And this just says I'm only exporting this piece. This is going to become important for you to save time. Do not export an entire timeline of templates if you don't need it. So now let's export this clip here. Let's say this is my out. It's going to go from the very beginning to the end. My timeline is selected in blue, not these windows. So I've clicked on my timeline, File, Export, Media. So now I want to make sure it's H.264. That's correct. If it's not, you can change to H.264. That just means it's going to be exported as an MP4. This is 1920 by 1080 and it's 30 frames per second. I could go down to video here and change this frame rate to 29.97 and then change the name Final Comp to whatever the story slug is. So let's say this is a story about coronavirus and the Super Bowl, and that's the slug, coronavirus Super Bowl. That would be the slug of the story. I would want to name the stinger Coronavirus Super Bowl Stinger. But in this instance, I'm just doing this as an example. So I'm going to say, Jeanette Abrahamson Stinger. And I'm going to make sure to save it inside of the folder where I'm working out of. This is something that happens often where people will export and say, I don't know where I've saved it to. So you want to make sure to intentionally put it into the folder where you're working. And this just confirms it will be an MP4. Hit save. And now this will tell me I'm going to export about 6 seconds and 24 frames. And that's not a problem because if this were airing, we'd only be using about 3 seconds anyways. So all of this checks out, and then I'm going to just hit export. And that's how to edit this specific motion array template in Premiere Pro. When we've exported it, I'm going to go to the folder where I was just working, which is this folder, Jeanette Abrahamson Stinger. I'm going to make sure it says MP4 at the end. I'm going to double click it to open it up. And that's it. Then I'm just going to go ahead and upload this into Box. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Some of these templates are a lot easier than others. This was an example of one that was very easy because all you had to do is just change the text out. So next we're going to take a look at one that's a little bit more complex, where you'll be changing out some of the media elements like the photos or even the videos.